In 160 BC, farmers documented a watering system. So efficient it only needed attention once per week. Then humanity forgot it. Chinese agricultural administrator Fan Shengji compiled what historians recognize as one of the earliest systematic farming manuals in recorded history. The Fan Shengji Shu, the Book of Fan Shengji, documented irrigation methods practiced across the Han Dynasty. Buried in Chapter 7, between instructions for wheat spacing and millet cultivation, Fan described a watering system that required refilling once per week for an entire growing season. Not daily watering, not scheduled irrigation. One refill per week. The method used unglazed clay vessels buried at root depth. The pots released water only when the surrounding soil dried. When soil moisture was adequate, the clay sealed itself. No evaporation. No runoff. No timers. No electricity. No human intervention beyond weekly refills. Modern drip irrigation systems require electricity, programmable timers, replacement emitters, filters, and regular maintenance. They cost hundreds of dollars to install and demand seasonal rebuilding. The Han Dynasty method cost the price of a clay pot and worked for years. This is the secret botanist. We don't explore plants. We exhume them. Today we are opening the file on olla irrigation, the 4,000-year-old watering system that self-regulates based on plant demand, uses 50% less water than surface methods, and was quietly abandoned when agriculture became an industry that required farmers to purchase equipment annually. The disappearance of olla irrigation was not suppression. It was structural irrelevance. A system that works forever without replacement parts cannot coexist with markets built on consumables. And buried in the same historical studies that documented water efficiency, researchers found something else. Fields irrigated with buried clay pots produced 87% less weed growth than surface-watered fields. But we will return to that. To understand why olla irrigation works, you must understand soil moisture tension. When soil dries, it creates suction, negative pressure, that pulls water from any available source. Plant roots generate this tension as they extract moisture. Dry soil pulls harder than moist soil. This tension is measurable, quantifiable, and plants respond to it constantly. An unglazed clay pot buried in soil functions as a passive moisture sensor. The clay is porous at the microscopic level, filled with tiny channels that allow water to seep through when external pressure exceeds internal resistance. When soil outside the pot is moist, those pores remain closed or release water slowly. When soil dries and creates suction, water flows through the clay walls at precisely the rate the soil demands. This is not a timer. This is not a schedule. This is physics. The pot responds to soil conditions in real time, second by second, without human programming or mechanical parts. It is a 0-volt sensor that adjusts water delivery based on actual plant need, not estimated need or scheduled need. The water efficiency is documented. Studies conducted at the International Center for Agricultural Research. In dry areas compared olla irrigation to surface watering and drip irrigation across multiple crop types. Olla irrigated plots used 50% to 70% less water than surface irrigated plots to produce equivalent yields. The reason is simple: zero evaporation and zero runoff. Water placed on the soil surface evaporates before plants access it. Water applied faster than soil absorbs it runs off. Water inside a buried clay pot cannot evaporate and cannot run anywhere except into the surrounding soil. Plant roots interact directly with the pot surface. When roots encounter the buried clay, they proliferate around it, forming dense root mats that maximize water uptake. The roots do not penetrate the pot. The clay is too dense, but they press against it, creating intimate contact that allows efficient water transfer. The plant effectively drinks from the pot as needed. The system is self-regulating in both directions. If soil moisture is adequate, the pot releases little to no water. If soil dries due to heat, wind, or plant uptake, the pot releases more. The adjustment happens passively, continuously, without sensors, without programming, without electricity. It is a biological feedback loop mediated by physics. The Han Dynasty did not understand the molecular mechanics, but they understood the results. Plant once. Bury pot. Refill weekly. Harvest. The system worked for melons, for vegetables, for fruit trees. It worked in deserts where water was scarce. It worked in clay soils where drainage was poor. It worked because the mechanism is fundamental, not dependent on specific conditions. This technology survived in isolated regions, parts of Central Asia, North Africa, the American Southwest, where traditional farming persisted. Indigenous communities in what is now Arizona and New Mexico used buried clay ollas for corn, beans, and squash. The method was documented by Spanish missionaries in the 1600s, described as Indian watering pots in colonial agricultural reports. But in mainstream agriculture, olla irrigation disappeared. Not suddenly. Not through regulation or prohibition. It faded as industrialization demanded different systems that scaled, that mechanized, that created markets for equipment and replacement parts. The transition happened in the 1960s. In 1959, Israeli engineer Simcha Blas developed the modern drip irrigation system while observing a tree growing vigorously near a leaking water pipe. He isolated the principle: slow, localized water delivery directly to root zones minimizes evaporation and maximizes efficiency. By 1965, Blas had partnered with Kibbutz Hatzerim to commercialize drip irrigation systems using plastic tubing and pressure-compensating emitters. The innovation was genuine. Drip irrigation transformed agriculture in arid regions. It allowed crops to grow in deserts where surface irrigation was impossible due to evaporation. It enabled precision water application at scale, hundreds of acres managed from a central valve system. For large monoculture operations, drip irrigation was revolutionary. But drip irrigation introduced something olla systems never required: recurring costs. Plastic tubing degrades under UV exposure and must be replaced every 3 to 5 years. Emitters clog from mineral deposits and require cleaning or replacement. Filters need maintenance. Timers need batteries or electricity. Pressure regulators fail. The system is not autonomous. It is infrastructure that demands continuous investment. For equipment manufacturers, this was ideal. A farmer who installs drip irrigation becomes a permanent customer. Tubing, emitters, filters, fittings, all consumables. The initial installation generates revenue. The maintenance generates recurring revenue. The replacement cycle generates predictable long-term revenue. It is a subscription model embedded in the irrigation system itself. Olla irrigation has no consumables. A buried clay pot lasts 5 to 10 years, sometimes longer. When it eventually cracks from freeze-thaw cycles or root pressure, you replace it with another pot. The cost is $5 to $20 depending on size. There are no filters, no emitters, no tubing, no timers, no electricity, no maintenance contracts. For a home gardener or small-scale grower, olla irrigation is economically superior. For an equipment manufacturer, it is economically useless. You cannot build an industry around a product people purchase once per decade. By the 1970s, agricultural extension offices across the United States and Europe were recommending drip irrigation as the modern, efficient watering method. Universities taught it in horticulture programs. Government subsidies supported installation costs for commercial farms. Olla irrigation, if mentioned at all, appeared in historical sections of textbooks as traditional methods or primitive technology. The framing was subtle but consistent. Drip irrigation was scientific, precise, scalable. Olla irrigation was folk knowledge, small-scale, impractical for modern agriculture. The comparison ignored the fact that olla systems were scientifically documented, water-efficient, and perfectly functional. The issue was not performance. The issue was market structure. A system that works indefinitely without generating equipment sales or maintenance revenue cannot be supported by industries built on selling equipment and maintenance. Olla irrigation was not banned or suppressed. It was simply made irrelevant through institutional neglect. No research funding, no development programs, no commercial promotion. While drip irrigation received billions in subsidies and research investment, olla irrigation received nothing. But there was another reason olla irrigation disappeared from mainstream agriculture. A reason that threatened not just equipment manufacturers but chemical companies. The weed data. In 2010, researchers at the Tamil Nadu Agricultural University in India conducted a 2-year field trial comparing irrigation methods for eggplant cultivation. The study measured water use, crop yield, and, critically, weed biomass. The results were published in the Journal of Agricultural Science but received almost no attention. Surface irrigation plots produced 465 kilograms of weed biomass per hectare over the growing season. Olla-irrigated plots produced 62 kilograms per hectare. That is an 87% reduction in weed growth. Not through herbicides. Not through mulching. Through irrigation method alone. The mechanism is straightforward. Most agricultural weeds are opportunistic annuals that germinate in the top 2 to 5 centimeters of soil, where moisture, light, and oxygen converge. Surface watering, whether by sprinkler, hose, or flood irrigation, saturates this germination zone continuously. Every watering event triggers a new flush of weed seeds. The farmer is not just watering crops. They are watering weeds. Olla irrigation delivers water 10 to 20 centimeters below the soil surface, directly into the root zone of established crops. The soil surface remains dry except immediately after rain. Weed seeds in the top layer receive no moisture. They do not germinate. The seeds remain dormant or die. The crops, with roots extending to the buried pots, receive all the water they need. The weeds receive none. This is not a minor detail. Weed management is one of the largest costs in agriculture. A global herbicide industry emerged worth $26 billion annually. Manual weeding labor costs billions more. Mechanical cultivation, tilling to disrupt weed growth, damages soil structure, increases erosion, and consumes fuel. Anything that reduces weed pressure without additional input saves money and reduces chemical dependence. Olla irrigation reduces weed pressure by 87% without herbicides, without labor, without machinery. It does this passively as a side effect of subsurface water delivery. For a farmer, this is a massive economic advantage. For herbicide manufacturers, this is a massive economic threat. A farming system that simultaneously reduces water use by 50% and weed growth by 87% should have been embraced, funded, and promoted. Instead, it was ignored. The Tamil Nadu study was published. It was cited occasionally in academic papers. It did not change agricultural practice. It did not trigger research programs or extension office recommendations. The reason is structural. Agricultural research funding comes largely from corporations that sell inputs, seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, equipment. Studies that demonstrate ways to reduce input use receive less funding. Technologies that eliminate input purchases receive no funding. Olla irrigation eliminates equipment purchases and herbicide purchases simultaneously. It is a double threat. For home gardeners, this weed suppression is immediately practical. A vegetable garden using olla irrigation requires significantly less weeding than a surface-watered garden. The time saved is substantial. The reduction in herbicide use, if herbicides were used at all, is immediate. The system works without effort. But the weed data explains why olla irrigation will never be promoted by mainstream agriculture. A method that starves weeds is a method that starves herbicide sales. And herbicide sales are not negotiable for an industry built on chemical dependence. Olla irrigation is not complex to implement. The method requires no specialized tools, no technical knowledge, and no ongoing maintenance beyond refilling water. What it requires is an unglazed clay pot, soil, and crops. Begin with pot selection. The pot must be unglazed terracotta, pure clay fired at low to medium temperatures. Glazed pots are impermeable and will not release water. Ceramic pots with decorative finishes do not work. You need simple, porous clay. Most garden centers sell unglazed terracotta pots ranging from 4 inches to 12 inches in diameter. For vegetable gardening, 8-inch to 10-inch pots are ideal. The pot must have a drainage hole at the bottom, which you will seal. Use a cork cut to size, a rubber stopper, or food-safe silicone sealant. The seal must be watertight. Test by filling the pot with water and checking for leaks. If water seeps through the bottom seal, reseal and test again. Select a planting location. Each buried pot irrigates a radius of approximately 2 feet in average soil. Spacing depends on plant density. For tomatoes, peppers, or eggplant, 1 pot per plant or per 2 plants is sufficient. For leafy greens or closely spaced crops, 1 pot can serve a 3-foot by 3-foot area. Dig a hole slightly larger than the pot. The hole should be deep enough that the pot's rim sits 1 to 2 inches above the soil surface. This prevents soil, mulch, and debris from washing into the pot when it rains. Place the pot in the hole. Backfill around the pot with the excavated soil, pressing firmly to eliminate air pockets. The pot should be stable, not wobbling. Plant your crops around the buried pot. Space them according to their normal requirements, positioning them within 12 to 18 inches of the pot. Water the transplants from the surface initially to help them establish. Once roots reach the pot, usually within 2 weeks, surface watering becomes unnecessary. Fill the pot with water. Cover the opening to prevent evaporation and to keep debris, insects, and animals out. A flat stone, a ceramic saucer, or a piece of wood works. The cover does not need to be sealed, just placed over the opening. Check the water level weekly during hot weather, every 10 to 14 days during mild conditions. Refill when the water level drops to the halfway point or lower. The pot will never empty completely if plants are actively growing. Soil suction draws water continuously. If the pot empties quickly, you may need additional pots or larger pots for the planting area. That is the entire system. No timers. No hoses. No electricity. No programming. No emitters to clean. No tubing to replace. The pot does not clog because water flows through porous clay, not through narrow openings. The pot does not fail unless it cracks, which happens infrequently and is immediately obvious. For raised beds, bury 1 pot per 4 to 6 square feet depending on crop density. For in-ground rows, space pots 3 to 4 feet apart along the row. For container gardening, the method is less practical. Olla irrigation works best with direct soil contact. The initial cost is the price of pots. An 8-inch unglazed terracotta pot costs $3 to $8 depending on region and retailer. 10 pots, enough to irrigate a 20-foot by 10-foot vegetable garden, cost $30 to $80. There are no additional costs. No filters. No tubing. No emitters. No timers. No replacement parts. The water savings are immediate and measurable. Gardeners who switch from surface watering to olla irrigation report reducing watering frequency by half or more. A garden that required watering every other day may require refilling pots once per week. The plants receive the same amount of water or more, but evaporation and runoff are eliminated. The weed reduction is equally immediate. Within 2 weeks of installing ollas and ceasing surface watering, weed germination drops noticeably. The soil surface dries and remains dry. Existing weeds die back. New weeds fail to germinate. Weeding time decreases by 70% to 90% compared to surface-watered gardens. For a home gardener, these are not abstractions. They are measurable, observable changes that happen within one growing season. The system works not because of complexity but because of physics. Water moves toward dry soil. Roots grow toward water. The pot mediates the relationship passively, continuously, without human intervention. Olla irrigation did not disappear because it failed. It disappeared because it succeeded in ways that modern agricultural markets cannot monetize. A watering system that requires no electricity, no replacement parts, and no annual purchases is economically incompatible with industries built on selling electricity, replacement parts, and annual purchases. The method was not banned. It was not suppressed by regulation or conspiracy. It was simply made structurally irrelevant. Research funding flowed to systems that generated equipment sales. Extension offices recommended methods that supported manufacturers. Universities taught technologies that aligned with industry partnerships. Olla irrigation, requiring none of these, received none of these. The 4,000-year-old method survived in the margins, small gardens, traditional farms, communities where industrial agriculture had not yet displaced older knowledge. In those places, people who remembered or never forgot continued burying pots, refilling them weekly, and harvesting without daily watering. The method worked because the physics did not change. Now, the knowledge is returning. Not through institutions. Not through commercial promotion. Through gardeners sharing information, testing methods, and discovering that what worked in 160 BC still works. The clay pot does not care about market structures. It responds to soil moisture tension the same way it did under the Han Dynasty. You have a choice. You can install drip irrigation systems that require timers, electricity, and replacement parts every few years. You can water by hand daily, losing half the water to evaporation. Or you can bury a clay pot, refill it weekly, and let physics manage irrigation while you do something else. The system works. The data confirms it. The question is not whether Olla irrigation is effective. The question is whether effectiveness matters in a food system optimized for equipment sales rather than food production. If this file changed how you see the hose in your hand every evening, subscribe to The Secret Botanist. We are excavating the methods they replaced with products. The next excavation reveals which medieval composting system was erased from agriculture when synthetic nitrogen became profitable. Some technologies were abandoned because they failed. Some were abandoned because they succeeded without creating dependence. The clay pot does not lie. The water efficiency is measurable. What you choose to bury determines whether you feed a garden or an industry.